program, is it features one of our unique programs, our Toastmaster group. So we have a Launchpad Job Club Toastmaster group. It was started, what year did it start? You guys know? The history? It was when we were back at the gymnasium.
2008.
2008. And we had a panel discussion one time. We had an evening program with it was called Success Stories, and it featured panelists, Launchpad members who were now working. And what was so interesting is each one cited something different that had been the key element that had gotten them employed. And there were 3 of those people who were employed had been part of our initial Toastmaster group. They were charter members of our Toastmaster group. But even when that was not, and one of them said that was the key element, that was what gave them the confidence, that was what gave them the presentation skills to go out there and get a job. But all of them cited how important it was. And so we've decided, in order to inform you of how cool it is and how closely related Toastmasters is to the job search process, our Toastmaster group is our program. And this, looking at their agenda that they gave me, this is going to be really interesting. You're going to see the results of this kind of training. So I'm going to, you're the Master of Ceremonies, Bill Morita.
I'm Bill Morita, president of the Launchpad Toastmasters group, and I'm here to introduce the speakers that we have for today. And one thing I need to emphasize is that we are trying to introduce you to what Toastmasters is about. And amongst other things, it's about speaking, leadership, and having fun.
Can you keep this on him?
You can't do anything without having fun, right? So, first of all, speaking. We all want to speak better. It's certainly a key element to getting a job. But getting better at anything implies practice. Where do you practice, especially if you're feeling shy? You need a safe place to practice. And one of the things that Toastmasters provides is a safe place to practice both speaking and starting to exercise some leadership skills. So, with that in mind, I will introduce our first speaker, Tina DeSouza. Now, for most of her life, Tina thought of public speaking as something that other people did, but not something that she could do. Although she would step up from time to time and give presentations or demos at her work, she had great anxiety in doing so. After joining Toastmasters in Virginia in the October timeframe of 2013, Tina has gently been guided by the club to become an active, participating member. By the time she earned her first Toastmasters award a year later, she was hooked on public speaking. Today, she is going to tell us about how Toastmasters has made interviewing a positive experience for her and how it can be more positive for you. And the title of her speech is, Where Will You Make Your Mistakes? Tina DeSouza, where will you make your mistakes?
Good morning, Michelle. You may not remember me, but I was here last week for an interview. I'm back this week for my second interview. I'm here to see Mr. Smith. There he is now. Michelle, it's nice to see you again, but now I have to go to my interview with Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith led me down a long hallway to a large conference room where there were 2 men seated. I knew who they were. I'd met them the previous week when I had my first interview. I was there for my second interview. This was to be my technical interview. As I took my place at the table, Mr. Smith handed me a piece of paper. He said, these are the questions we're going to be asking you today. I looked at the piece of paper, and I confirmed that these were indeed technical questions. I'm a software engineer, so they were questions about object-oriented programming and ActionScript. But I put the paper down on the table, and I pushed it out of my view. I didn't want to know what the questions were before they were asked. I knew I could answer them. So I refocused my attention on Mr. Smith, and he started asking me the questions. When he would ask a question, I would take a breath, give myself time to think, and then I would answer the question. And we did that about 15 times, and the interview was over. I thanked them for their time, and Mr. Smith walked me back to the reception area where I said goodbye to Michelle, the receptionist, for the last time. I walked back to my car so that I could contemplate what had just happened. And as I was sitting there, I had a very profound thought. I think that went pretty well. I was feeling really good about myself. I felt that I had answered the questions clearly, competently, and coherently. I felt my self-esteem rise. I knew that if I didn't get that job, it wasn't because of something I did at that interview. Fellow job seekers, is that how your interviews go? We have one yes, and the rest of you are all going, oh my God. Is that how they're supposed to go? Because that's not how they go for me. The truth be told, that's not how interviews go for most people. And the truth be told, that's not how interviews usually went for me. The story I just told you is true. It happened a couple of months ago. But it was the first time that I ever went through a technical interview and felt good about myself when I left. My experience with interviews used to be, I would stumble over my words and I blah, blah, blah through the whole interview. And when I left feeling defeated. I left feeling stupid. And I left feeling, I don't want to do that again. I often had the thought, why would they hire me? I wouldn't hire me. If you can relate to this story, I may have something to help you with today. Forgot to put that. I sat back and I thought about what was different. Because that interview happened 2 months ago, and my previous interview that I had before that was 4 years ago. I thought, what did I do in those intervening years? What changed? And I narrowed it down to 2 things that changed for me. And it didn't take me 4 years for it to happen. It really only took 2, and the bulk of it happened in 1 year. And this is what changed my experience from feeling defeated after interviews to feeling dynamic after interviews. The first thing I did, you might not be surprised, since we're talking about Toastmasters today. I joined Toastmasters. But I didn't just join and say, hey, now I'm a member of Toastmasters. I got very involved. I found it to be fun, so it was easy for me. I never joined Toastmasters to improve my interviewing skills. It just happened by accident. This is half of my story. The other thing that I did that was very important is that I discovered that mistakes are not optional. Some of you know this already. I didn't understand it at all. I'm a perfectionist. I don't like making mistakes. I hate making mistakes. And to make mistakes in front of other people is the worst thing. That's why even me just being on this stage is a big thing for me today, because I hate making mistakes, and I know I'm going to make mistakes in front of you here today. My history with not wanting to make mistakes started very young. And I remember my first memory, I think I was 10 or younger. And I remember that my school was having a play, as all schools have, right? For me, though, it was a big deal because my mother had bought me a new dress. It was a store-bought dress. My mother made all my clothes. For me to have a store-bought dress was a big deal. I still remember it to this day. It was a white dress. It had lace. And it was so pretty. And the thing I remember most was it had tiny pleats. And when I walked, it would move, and I felt like a princess. And I couldn't wait to wear that dress on the stage. So you know what I did? When I woke up the day of the play, I said, Mom, I'm sick. I can't go to school today. Well, my mom was really smart. She knew I wasn't sick. And she also knew that I wanted to wear that dress. So she brought it into the room and she hung it up where I could see it. And she said, oh, Tina, are you sure you're sick? Because if you're really sick, you can't wear your pretty white dress today. And the conflict started for me. Because I looked at the pretty white dress. And I thought about what might happen if I got on that stage. Because I thought, I might make a mistake. And if I made a mistake, it would be the worst thing that happened to me. So I told my mother, no, Mom, I'm really sick. I can't go to school today. And she allowed me to stay home. And that was the first time I remember my pattern of not showing up. And not showing up because I was afraid that if I made a mistake, it would be my death. And I still fight this today. Once it's inside, it's hard to get rid of it. But I learned that making mistakes is critical to learning. And when I joined Toastmasters, I discovered that if I make mistakes on stage, I don't die. And I started making lots of them. This is just 3 times. When I gave speeches about, oh gosh, who knows what these speeches were about. It's not just speeches. I took roles in meetings. I did table topics, which we're going to give you an opportunity to experience in a little while. I just never gave up. And every time I made mistakes, and I survived to tell the tale. And now I'm here talking to you about my story. I read a lot. So I have a lot of books I can recommend to you if you're interested, but this one was very critical to me. It's called The Perfect Wrong Note. It's geared toward musicians, but the concept is the same whether you're learning to play a piano, or you're learning to play a sport, or you're learning to interview. The author talks about something that most of you will be familiar with. He talks about the idea of a practice room. If you've ever learned to play a piano, or even basketball, you have a court, right? You have a tennis court. This idea of a practice room, this is where we make our mistakes, right? So if this is your practice room here, you want to make your mistakes there. And you want to make them in the practice room because you don't want to get on the stage and make your mistakes on the stage. This is a pretty obvious concept. And most of you probably get this with no problem. But what I didn't understand as a perfectionist is that mistakes are not optional, and I'm going to make them one of these 2 places. And the decision is mine where I want to make them. And Mr. Westney, the author of that book, said, if you're in your practice room, what you want to do is you want to make the right kind of mistakes. That's why he calls it the perfect wrong note. And when you make these mistakes in your practice room, then when you get on your stage, you've got them out of your system, and you don't make them again. That was the key for me, understanding that I'm going to make mistakes. Where am I going to make them? So I went back and I started thinking about this idea of interviews. How is it different? And it's not. Think about your interviews. When you're in an interview, you're on a stage. You've got people in front of you, and they're judging everything you do. if you make mistakes at an interview. Any number of things. You could embarrass yourself. Has anyone ever embarrassed themselves at an interview? I'm not the only one, yes. I embarrassed myself. Like I said, that was my experience. Every time I would come back thinking, I just embarrassed myself at that interview. Oh my goodness. Of course, that happens. You're faced with judgment, as I said. There are people judging you, and they're judging you harshly. That's their job. That's why they're there. Just like that gentleman who was playing the piano on the stage. His audience is judging him because they paid a lot of money to listen to him, and they want a good show. And the same thing is happening in your interviews. They want a good show. They don't want you wasting their time. They've got 16 other people they need to talk to today. The worst case is that you don't get the job. And we call this the end of the line. You don't get the job. And often it happens because of what you do at the interview, or don't do at the interview. But I think there's a really close second. We think this is the worst thing, but I think there's a close second. And it's that you get the job, but you start the job as a poor communicator. And the reason this is a problem is because once they label you, you're a poor communicator, it's hard to dig out of this hole. If you don't understand why it's important to be a good communicator, that's outside the scope of this presentation, but I would like to talk to you later if you think, well, I don't need to be a really good communicator. It affects everything about your job. Okay? So I won't belabor that point, but do come talk to me if you don't know why that's important. So I thought about, well, this is our interview stage. What if we had a practice room? What if we didn't have to make all those mistakes? We do have a practice room, and I've been telling you about it all day, and we're going to continue to tell you about it. It's called Toastmasters. So how is the experience different if we're in a practice room with Toastmasters than on the stage of the interview? The first way it's different is that you never embarrass yourself in Toastmasters. Because you know what? You know what we do if you make a mistake in Toastmasters? Yay! We are the most energetic bunch when you make a mistake. We think it's great. Do you know why? It's not because we're trying to make fun of you. It's because you got up here and you made a mistake. And especially for people like me, as perfectionists, getting up here and making a mistake is a big deal. You discover that you don't die. The next thing that happens that's different in your practice room is when you're in the practice room of Toastmasters, instead of that judgment, you get empathy. It happens because we know where you are. Not just with public speaking. We know where you are with your job search. Everybody who's in Launchpad Toastmasters either has recently been looking for a job or still is looking for a job. So we understand a lot of your problems and we bring that empathy to the meetings. I told you a minute ago that not getting the job, that's the end of the line in the interview. They don't call you back and say, can we try that interview again next week? Maybe you'll do better. Because we really liked you and we think we'd just like to have you redo the interview. How many have had that experience? Not so much. But in Toastmasters, you get to try it again. You make a mistake. You give a speech and it doesn't go so well, you get to repeat it. I have repeated speeches many times. In fact, what I found was when I have made my worst blunders, what I want to do is give the same speech again the next day. And I've done it. I've gone to 2 different clubs and given the same speech two days adjacent. Because you want to get back up on that horse right away. You want to come back the next week. And try again. You probably won't make the same mistakes when you come back again. And finally, you don't want to start a job as a poor communicator, but in Toastmasters, we don't label you as a poor communicator. When you come to Toastmasters, our job is to find out what did you do well as a communicator. We want to start with what you do well, and we want to build on what you do well. Because you don't need anyone telling you what you don't do well. There's lots of people that'll tell you what you don't do well. We want to tell you what you do well. We want to give you the confidence to build on the skills you already have. And we also don't label you as a poor communicator because you're going to get better. So why label you anything? Because you're going to be a different person in terms of communication tomorrow than you were today. So it makes no sense to put any labels on you of any kind in Toastmasters. So the question is not, are you going to make mistakes? I don't know if there are any perfectionists here. I don't know if there are any of you who, like me, think that you can get through life without making mistakes. Or think, maybe, I used to think, well, I know I might make mistakes, but I can get through life without making them publicly. And that'll be my thing, I'll just hide them. You never grow, you never learn. And you really never really get to where you want to go when you don't make mistakes. So where will you make your mistakes? We have a stage. We have our interview stage. And some of you think that you're going to get by just going to interviews. And I'll get better as I go to interviews. That's true. You'll get better as you go to interviews. But what happens when that job you really wanted comes along and you haven't practiced and you lost it because you haven't been in the practice room? It's simple. Your choice, but we're offering you our practice room. Those of us in Toastmasters, this is our practice room. This is what we do. And this is what changed me from feeling defeated after an interview to feeling dynamic and happy about myself after an interview. We invite you to come, make your mistakes with us at Launchpad Toastmasters. We meet right after Launchpad Job Club every first, third, and fifth Friday. And if you can't come to those meetings, we meet on the second and fourth Thursdays at 6:30 or 6:30, 6:45 p.m., something like that, at the IHOP near 180 end of Ball. Stay if you can today. Join us anytime. But do come and join us as we make our mistakes, too. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
And thank you, Gina. And we have a second speaker for today. That would be Bill Morita. Gene is what they call an advanced communicator bronze and an advanced leader bronze. Those are certifications you get as you progress through Toastmasters. Gene has been a Launchpad member for 5 years, is a nursing leader and a experienced educator, and she will be talking to you today about what do you want to be when you grow up. What do you want to be when you grow up? Jean Morita.
I have a dream. Have we heard that?
Yeah.
Yes. And how many times have we heard that? And have we ever thought about it pertains to yourself? Well, as you, my husband has said to you, I'm a nurse and I'm a nursing leader. And early in my career, I had a dream. I wanted to be the chief nursing officer of the hospital. Or I wanted to start a new school. I wanted to do that. To do that, I had to get experience. I had to be a manager first. I had to become a director. And I had to go to an awful lot of school. 2 master's degrees and lots of student loans. Later, I became a chief nursing officer. Oh, I was living the dream. What prestige. Guess what came with that? My husband said, even when I was home, I was not home. It owned me, body and soul. My brain was doing schedules and ordering equipment and worrying about meetings and writing agendas the whole time, even when I was home. That led to health problems, panic attacks, and here I got this hospital off the ground and we got our certifications, and I was so proud of myself because I had educated all those nurses and all of these telemetry and ventilator skills. I was so proud that I was finally coming into it. I got let go because they had someone who could do it cheaper. I was devastated. I I did not quit. I went on to start a new school. They wanted to put an RN program into this private college. I went back and got my doctorate of education. I learned how to write curriculum. I got that school up and running. And guess what they did? They hired my second in command because she was cheaper and let me go. Wow. All this education. And so then we came to Austin. And I kept looking for jobs as a director. Because in my mind, that was my dream. And what hit me on the head this year was when we went to go start to do our taxes. And I had 4 W-2s. Oh my God. What's happening? Where is my dream? I had been a program director for Texas Nursing Association. I had been a program clinical director for a pain clinic. I had been the program director for another RN program here in town. And none of them, either I quit because of ethical reasons or this just wasn't fitting for me. My husband and I sat down because he said, "Your dream is different. Let's look at your dream, Jean. You can't keep going because it's killing you. Going through all these interviews, starting all of these jobs, it's killing you. You need to look at your dream." So I thought, what have I always leaned on in my nursing career? And it's this acronym, API. Assess, plan, implement, evaluate. So I made the assessment. What makes me happy in a job? I like to educate. I like to lead. But I like to lead from behind. I don't like to be out in front. And I don't like the politics of the day people. So my husband said, "What job have you done that is like that?" It was a house supervisor many years ago. And I thought, that's what it is. Well, I tried to get a house supervisor job. You know what they said to me?
Overeducated.
I'm overeducated, overqualified, and you don't have recent experience. So what did I have to do? I had to step out of the box. This old gal of 32 years as a nurse had to go take a travel assignment in another state to become a house supervisor so I would have current experience. Let me tell you, I thought I was going to die. I worked every shift. I worked 5 days a week. I was dying on the vine. But you know what? I got current house supervisor experience. And I came back to Austin. And thank you, Indeed.com, because they actually worked with me when I came with my husband to millions of these job club meetings, and they helped me relook at how my job search was. And instead of getting all those program director jobs, I started getting the house supervisor jobs. So the first week I was back, which was 2 days after Christmas, I had 2 interviews. And I remembered I'm interviewing them as well as they're interviewing me. I could have had another nursing program director job for a local college. That would have been many, many hours, not enough equipment, and it just wasn't what I wanted to do. Or I had a house supervisor job offering, but it was part-time. My husband's not working right now. How can I take a part-time job? Well, in that interview, I asked for what I needed. I said, I see that your house supervisor job is only 0.6. That's 2 12-hour shifts a week. Is it possible that I pick up other shifts? I am an educator. I see that, and it was with Seton. I see that Seton has a huge education program. My boss goes, now my boss, wait, I I have 2 openings for health supervisor job. You can have all the shifts you want. No, you're not going to go be an educator. You're going to be here and be my house supervisor and get night differential and get weekend differential. Oh my God, this is the best paying job I've had in Austin. And I'm getting to lead, I'm getting to educate, and I'm having everything I wanted. But I know! And it's not just, I realize that coming to Job Club, I'm a nurse. I don't need to go to Job Club. Okay, I'll sit in the back. I'll listen. My Toastmasters group is afterwards. But you know what? It sinks in. What they're telling you. Clean up your resume. Go after what you want. Know what your dream is. Know that you're going to make mistakes in the interview. I never really worry about the interview because I have a lot of experience and I can usually talk my way through most anything. I know. Arrogant, huh? So that was never mine, but it was being overqualified, and a lot of times they wouldn't hire me because they said, you won't stay. But when I explained to that manager, no, I choose this job. I went out of state so I could prove that I wanted to do this job, so I could get current experience, and I got that job. So, now let me see what I wrote. Okay. Actually, I'm pretty much on. So, what I'd like to say to you today, relook at your dream. Is it the dream of 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Or is it the dream that's going to fit into your life today? One of the things that's very important to me is I have time off. And by me working 3 12-hour shifts a week, I have time to go visit my grandkids. That is very important to me. I have grandkids all over the country, and spending time with them in these formative years is very important. Look at what's important to you. Actually, Tina has made the same statement to me. That's what made me think also. She said, I've done all kinds of things, Jean, but I don't know what's going to make me happy now. So we've both been taking this journey together. Think about, make your list. What do you want your job to bring to you? How do you get it? Implement things that will network. Come to Kathy's groups. Fix your resume. Go into interviews after you've practiced at Toastmasters. We even went to a Toastmaster group last night. It gets addictive. You want to be around other Toastmasters because it helps you feel comfortable talking. So, my challenge to you today, dream the dream of today. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Jean. And now we get to the third segment of our program, which is table topics, which will be led by our very own Norma Hernandez.
Okay. So I've been part of this Launchpad Toastmasters for several years, basically since its inception. When I first joined Toastmasters, let me back up. When I first got laid off, roughly in 2009, Kathy's meetings had about 300 people, and we were held in an auditorium. And it was large and intimidating. During all that time when I was attending those first Launchpad meetings, I never, ever once got up to tell anyone what my name was or what kind of job I was looking for. I just never had the courage to do it. It was actually rather difficult for me. I joined Toastmasters, and my ability or my comfort in front of a mic really changed. So I'm not the most eloquent speaker. I'm not. But I am a comfortable speaker, although my voice is quavering a little bit. I really am a comfortable speaker. I certainly can get up in front of an executive and explain and get my point across. I certainly can communicate what I need to on a regular basis. And I certainly can get in front of a group of people to explain what I need to. I learned that through Toastmasters. And what we're going to do right now is table topics, which is my favorite part of a Toastmasters meeting. Basically, you get up, I give you something to talk about for a minute or two, and you talk about it. You have no preparation, you have no idea what I'm going to ask you. Doesn't that sound a lot like an interview? I mean, you can prepare for an interview, you can have some idea. But how many times have you gotten the interview question of, where are you going to be in 5 years? What is your plan for the next 5 years? And do you have a good answer for that? Sometimes in interviews, you're required to do a little bit of mental gymnastics, right? How prepared are you to land on your feet when somebody asks you a question, a difficult question that you're unprepared for? That basically is what table topics are all about. But table topics are my favorite part of the meeting because you never know what you're going to get asked. At Launchpad Toastmasters, we focus a lot on questions, job-related questions. But you can get asked, what's your favorite color? You get asked anything. And you've got to find a way to come up with a creative answer. You've got to find a way to come up with a compelling answer and get whatever your answer is communicated across effectively. So that's what table topics is. It's really practicing for your interview questions. And I can tell you that I love to do interviews. They're always kind of a challenge and a test. They really are. I've learned to relax before an interview. And part of that is because of table topics. You learn to land on your feet when you're asked questions. So what I'm going to do is ask a couple of people to come up here, one at a time. I'm going to ask you a few quick questions about yourself, and then I'm going to ask you a question. And we're all going to kind of get a feel for what table topics are like. So do I have any volunteers? Come on up. Love your enthusiasm. Hi, my name is Norma, and you are?
David.
David, and what kind of job are you looking for?
I have no earthly idea.
Excellent.
I am qualified to work in education. I've done that for a long time. I have substituted for a long time, which means that I've worked with from every age level and every subject. So, but I also have worked on web design and was also taking classes in web development at SCC.
Okay, so it's a big, broad spectrum there.
Yes.
But I think education is very important. I think you never stop learning. I think that when you stop learning, you sort of just get stagnant. So my goal in just about every job is to do something a little different so that I'm constantly learning. And I think that that's a really kind of a noble thing to teach. It's a gift, not everybody has it. So can you, in 1 to 2 minutes, tell us, what do you think the most important aspect of being an educator is?
Well, I think the most important aspect of being an educator is, I think that the most important aspect of being an educator is to have a good rapport with your students, to be able to be flexible. I think that as a substitute teacher, I had to be very flexible. I usually worked at what they would call Title I schools, which were the tougher schools. I happened to be bilingual. My mother was Mexican from the border region. So I had that experience, the sort of bicultural experience that I also got living on the border city of El Paso. And so I always had a passion to work with the less privileged, but I also had a Catholic education, which meant that my approach was more in education has always been more with a firm hand. Over the years, I've learned that that is important, but it's also important to have a compassionate heart. And one has to be able to balance the two and to take the student from where he is or she is and to lift that student up. And Of course, there's the pedagogy that is very important. There's, all of the methodology that one needs to learn. But I think the most important thing is to genuinely have that rapport with the students. Let them know that you care. Let them know that you care.
I think it's very true, and I think that one of the most, engagement with somebody when you're in an interview. Have you ever been through an interview and not connected with people? Isn't that the most painful interview of all? So you have to figure out ways to engage people. And Table Topics teaches you that. It really does. You learn about people. You learn about, what makes them tick. 1 to 2 minutes. That's a short amount of time. Basically, your interview questions should be your answers should be very succinct, right? Have you ever had the interview question, tell me about yourself? Do you hate that question?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's universal. So, if you ask me to tell you something about myself, I'm going to try to keep it to 1 to 2 minutes, and let's move on to the next question, the one that's probably more relevant. So, one thing that Table Topics teaches you is how to be succinct. You've literally got one minute to answer a question. Why is the sky blue? 1 minute. So you have to stretch it out to a minute. You have to learn to do that. But you can't go over 2 minutes. Or else you go over the time. So it teaches you how to answer questions within how to be succinct, how to answer questions within a time frame. And that's really important when you are in an interview. You want to be able to communicate what you need to fast and effectively. So, with that in mind, do I have a second volunteer for Table Topics? Come on up, Harry. Right here. So, Harry, what kind of job are you looking for? Just real quick, and just to give me an idea what to ask.
I don't know if I'm looking for a job as much as revenue. I want to be a revenue source. I don't know if I want to sit in a dark, dingy cubicle with fluorescent lights shining down. I haven't made up my mind yet, but really I'm leaning towards a revenue-generating stream.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question that I think is going to generate some discussion. Or some thought on your part, and remember, succinct, 1 to 2 minutes. So, what is your dream job? What is your dream job? If you could have any job at all, what would it be?
I think it would be what I'm doing right now, is talking to a group of people and getting their undivided attention. This, to me, is the supreme job. I'm looking at each one of you. The people in the back, they're turned away, they're sort of scattered. But for a few moments, I am the center of attention. And I love that. It's sort of like being like a giant zeppelin. You've got to be bigger than life. You don't want to be like the Hindenburg now. Burn like the hydrogen, but you want to be a helium-filled Goodyear balloon. But you have to be bigger than life. And you have to be ready to make mistakes. I was watching a movie maybe about 6 months ago. It was Mr. Moto. And one of his Confederates, one of these spies in one of these seaports, said the slightest mistake could mean death. Tina, that's sort of what we were talking about before, except the opposite. The slightest mistake does not mean death. You have to be able to get up here. You have to be able to express yourself. And the only way you can do that is through repetition. Every week I go to my Toastmasters meetings, sometimes I go to 2. But it's about the practice, about the rehearsal, about being able to think clearly on your feet. And sometimes you don't think so clearly when you're standing on your feet, and that's okay too. That's kind of a meditation. When you get up here and you go blank, that's okay. That's the kind of meditation. So let me wrap it up by saying that I think that I've clarified whatever my dream job is. It's pretty much doing what I do now, communicating to a large group of people about what I'm thinking about. And this is what I'm thinking about at this very moment. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be subtle. It doesn't have to be philosophical. It can just be a kind of narrative on what I'm thinking about at any given time. Because that's the essence of comedy. That's the essence of drama. and let me take a deep breath and say, Miss Toastmaster or Miss Table Topics Master, please come up here and I'll shake your hand and say thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity.
Now, if we could only find a way to get somebody to pay for that,
Yes,
that'd be really great.
Bitcoin.
In Bitcoin, you're always right there on the edge. Yeah. So, would anybody else like to come up here? Do you have the courage to step up and stand in front of a whole bunch of people and just, talk about anything? Roxanne, would you like to come on up? Roxanne is a Toastmaster. And she's not always what she seems. After years of giving speeches, I've really learned this about Roxanne. She constantly surprises you. And those are my favorite kinds of people. People who look one way and you have no idea what's going on underneath. I love surprises. So Roxanne, will you tell us a little bit, something about you that nobody else knows, or that's not broadly known? Something about you that's not broadly known.
Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here today. And I'm so excited to see so many people here. Sorry that you had to squeeze into this tiny room. I suppose that one of the things that Norma was talking about when she said that I surprise her is the fact that I ride a motorcycle. And I've taken a 1,300-mile tour of Texas with a friend of mine and totally enjoyed it. But something that Norma doesn't know is that once upon a time, I had a hot sports car. I had an Acura NSX, cherry red with a black top. And this is one of those $80,000 models, except that when I bought it, it was multiple years old and I got it for about 23. But it got me into an organization that was very unique because not a lot of these cars had been made. And it was fun turning heads when I drove by in my hot NSX. Now, while I've talked about myself, there is something else that I want to talk about today too, and that is Toastmasters. You've been hearing about it all day long, and, well, for the last hour. And I do have magazines at the back of the room that you can take home. There's not a lot of them, so it's going to be first come, first served. They're on both the desk in the back and the table over here. So as you're leaving, if you want a Toastmasters magazine, please grab one. These are actually magazines that our members have used themselves, and after they were done with them, they've contributed them for the purpose of sharing with everybody else. So I hope you enjoy learning more about Toastmasters, and see you in a few minutes for the meeting. Thank you, Norma.
I'm constantly impressed with Roxanne's ability to land on her feet. Boom. She always nails it. I think that's what Table Topics teaches you, how to answer anything. Okay, what you're not expecting, which is something that's really, really critical when you're looking for a job. So, having said that, I think we have time for one more table topic. Is that accurate to say? Okay. Anyone else want to come up here? I'll ask you an easy question. Or I'll ask you a job-related question. Something, about your industry, something about the kind of job you're looking for. Actually, right now is an opportunity for you to get up and give us a little elevator speech about yourself. Who doesn't want that?
I'll take that.
Come on up, Stephen. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, a lot has been said about elevator speeches. Can you give me more or less the short outline of what needs to be included in an elevator?
Sure. I'll give you my interpretation. Kathy may have a different one. But my interpretation of elevator speech is, I'm somewhere in a building. I'm stuck in an elevator with somebody. We're going down 20 floors. And I just happen to find out that he's looking for a project manager. And I just happen to be looking for a project manager job. So I've got to convince this person, whoever that is, to hire me, or to have a little bit of interest in me, or to have another conversation with me. That is your hook. Your elevator speech is your 1 to 2 minutes where you describe yourself and describe what you do. And you generate some interest in yourself. With that, Stephen, take it away.
Hello everyone, I am a software developer, and every time I say software developer, the first thing that comes to a lot of people's mind is, oh, that means you sit in the room all day and work on a computer writing code. Ladies and gentlemen, that's actually very far from the truth of a software developer. Now granted, yeah, coding on a computer is part of the job, but that's a very small part of the job. As a software developer, I talk to many clients. I find out what kind of problem they're looking to solve and how they can use software and technology to do so. I then try to understand the client's requirements. What specifically do they need in the solution? Then I sit down with my team. We go over the client's problems, their requirements, and then we collaborate together to come up with a possible solution. And then us engineers, we all work together to begin to design the solution. What code changes do we need? What new functions do we need to write? And then the part that everyone thinks about, well, when they hear software engineers, we actually code and implement the solutions. Then we start testing. First we test within the team. We have other engineers test the product, test each product that we worked on, look for any bugs and fix them. Then we go back to the client and say, okay, we have created a prototype, and it's your turn to test and provide us with the feedback. With the feedback, then we refine stuff and make further changes. And then finally we go, assuming everything's all good to go, and the client gives us the green light, then they go on what is called the move into production, or when to implement the solution. And there you have it. And I notice one common thing in all of that, interaction with other people. And that means communicating with others. That also means making presentations. And that also means making sales. That's right, engineers do all of those things. They interact with people, they make sales. An engineer wears many hats. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. So there you have it. It's really up to you. I think table topics are, I think learning to answer an unexpected question. I think learning to think on your feet is really, really critical when you are looking for a job. So this is a place, this is a safe environment where you can come in and do that. And I promise you, if you do come to Toastmasters, we will have table topics that will generate some thought for you, that will make you want to come up and answer the question. The thing I like the most about table topics is that it's about you. It's not about us. It's about you and who you are and what you have to say. Table topics are an endless source of interest to me because you never know what people are going to say when they come up here. You never really know how they're going to answer something. You never know when somebody's going to string together the right set of words to kind of catch your attention. So you want that grace when you are in an interview. You want that ability to land on your feet, to answer whatever they're asking you, to think clearly, to answer succinctly, gracefully. You want that practice. So if you get a chance, come join us at Toastmasters. I promise you'll get that practice. We call on folks for table topics all the time, and we love to see new faces. Thank you.